This is I Pierce the Toast. I'm Sean.
And I'm AJ. Let's make some toast.
Welcome back to I Pierce the Toast. AJ,
Can we not?
I feel...
Can we just not? I'm about to implode. Can we just not? It's IPTT.
I feel like that may have been a badly used word right now.
What?
Implode.
Oh, okay. That old chestnut.
That old chestnut. So yeah, we're not gonna get away without talking about this.
No, not at all.
I mean, I know typically we try to focus on film and entertainment news, but
I mean, it's kind of film news. I mean kind of, if you talk about one particular movie,
one particular film. Yeah, the Titan vessel that was intended to take some very wealthy tourists on
and a researcher
down to view the Titanic. It was announced today that unfortunately the entire crew was lost. I guess not crew, because there isn't really a crew.
Yes.
There's one guy with a fucking Logitech. Jesus Christ! Like the more I heard about it, the more it just annoyed me, because it was like, okay, yes, I understand a lot how a lot of people feel about billionaires, and don't get me wrong, I'm probably in the same boat, but just the sheer audacity that went into the building of this fucking vessel. Like, oh, you're gonna make it out of metal? Fuck no. We're gonna make it out of fucking string cheese and duct tape
and a little bit of carbon fiber.
Are you gonna put in like some advanced control systems? Fuck no. We're gonna throw in a Logitech fucking PS2 controller.
We started with the N64 controller, but we realized that toggle buttons were exactly what we needed. So,
Jesus. And this is what sucks. I mean, obviously, some people lost their lives, and that's shitty and that's awful.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to poke fun at just the absolute fucking ridiculousness that went into the crafting of this vessel, and then looking at what they had made and said, yep, this'll work.
Because, I mean, just thinking about all they would have needed to do to get them to the surface, had they actually been still alive, they would have had to get them to the surface. They would have had to basically, whenever they have kind of like compression sickness or something like that.
Oh, the bends.
Yeah, the bends. Like whenever you have to get.
Yeah, I don't know what the term is for getting around the bends, but yes, they'd have to
to say compression sickness, I think I mean like.
Yeah, what's
pressure sickness?
What's the word? They'd have to account for the bends.
They have to get the gas out of their blood, essentially. Then they have to get them to the top. Then they have to unbolt the damn thing to get into it. So it's like there was so much they needed to do, and I think by today, before we found out that unfortunately it did implode, it was like, oh, well, we can maybe get to them, but it was like they possibly have 20 hours of air left, but maybe not. And
honestly, I feel like the implosion was probably the best case scenario.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know how quick that death is going to be. I have no idea. I know nothing about aquatics and at that level of depth, but I have to imagine whatever the time frame of that death was, whether it was instantaneous or a few minutes, it's got to be a lot better than slowly suffocating in a tin can, hoping to God that you're going to be rescued. That just sounds terrifying.
So it's almost as if you just feel trapped, which is actually kind of a weird segue into today's topic.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean it's very, very weird because today we will be talking about Robin McLaurin Williams, or just famously known as Robin Williams, and he did famously take his life. And one of the things that kind of came into that, and we'll talk about this in the end, was that he felt trapped in his own mind, and that's unfortunately why he did what he did.
Did you say McLaurin?
Yeah,
of course he was a Mick.
Yeah,
goddamn right. Yeah, that's right. In case anybody couldn't tell, the scene spelling of my name indicates Irish on my behalf. So, yeah, that's right. Robin Williams, one of ours. You're welcome, world.
So before we launch into just everything about his life, we'll just go into like the basics here. Robin McLaurin Williams, sorry. But we're just going to say Robin Williams. He was born July 21st, 1951, and he did unfortunately pass August 11th, 2014. His parents were Robert Fitzgerald Williams and Lori McLaurin. I didn't know this. I did not know he actually had siblings.
Oh yeah, he's got two?
Yeah, two.
Two siblings. Yeah.
Robert Todd Williams and McLaurin Smith Williams. So his middle name is also his brother's first name, but also his mom's maiden last name.
That's weird. That's like some Gattaca shit.
Yeah,
you know, like the kid's born and he gives his name to the kid, but then he's like, no, give him my name as a middle name. And then when the son that he likes is born, he's like, okay, he can have my actual name.
Right. He was married 3 times throughout his life, and we'll talk about this again later on, where we talk about the fact that it seemed like he didn't ever really want to be alone because there was only a year in between each of his marriages at the most.
I mean, based off what we know about him now, that tracks.
Yeah.
You know, his mental illness manifested as a desperate need to kind of fill the void, whether it was with people or sometimes substance.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I could buy that for $1. This idea that, you know, he was jumping into relationships, whether they were long term or short term, for this kind of need to, you know, stave off whatever it was inside him that was growing.
His brother actually mentioned this at some point, because whenever they were growing up, they did grow up separately. They did know about each other later, but, you know, I think it was Robert was the son from his dad's first marriage or something like that, and then his brother was the only brother that he had from his mom, but not from the same dad. And I think it's McLaurin is the only one that actually kind of looks like him. Robert looks more like his dad, McLaurin looks like their mom, and Robin looks way more like his mom. Well, McLaurin was saying that whenever you grow up as an only child like that, sometimes it does instill something inside of you. Maybe it's a need, a want, maybe just like something for comfort. And he says that added with depression, which they definitely had in their family, just kind of breeds something. And that's kind of like what Robin was searching for throughout his life.
That makes sense.
But like I said, Robin was married 3 times throughout his life, to Valerie Velarde, to Marcia Garcia, and then Susan Schneider. And I might have said Garcia wrong. I think it's Garces, but
which one was the nanny scandal?
Nanny, Marcia.
That was Marcia. Okay.
It wasn't even a scandal. We'll talk about that later, but even Valerie cleared it up and said that it wasn't even a scandal. So,
well, I mean, she did now, but you know, you had me watch the documentary on HBO Max. Phenomenal documentary.
Yes, very much.
By the by. And Valerie noted in her interview that at the time she didn't say anything, not because she, you know, was vindictive or that she felt this was warranted or that she agreed with the way the media was portraying this, you know, kind of running off with the nanny narrative. For her, it was just, she's always been a private person. She's never been one to, you know, to deny or confirm rumors that spread in the media. So unfortunately, her silence on this at the time unfortunately helped to grow that narrative. Yeah. But now, you know, here years later in this interview, she has made it very clear, like, no, that wasn't the case. We were together, and then later on, he developed a relationship with this woman who used to nanny for us.
Exactly. And then he does have 3 children. I think all of them are actors. Cody is the one I don't know the most about.
Not all of them. I actually did look that up because I was curious. Cody is a behind-the-snes guy, because that's what it said, is that the other 2, you're absolutely right, actors, writers, and producers. And then Cody, the youngest, I believe?
Yeah,
30, he's like 31. The information I found on him is he doesn't like to be in the limelight. He's very much a private person. It was like the biggest thing we found out about him was a few years ago, him getting married to his wife, Maria. But he has always been more of a behind-the-scenes kind of guy. So he started as an assistant producer, which is interesting because it's like, you're Robin Williams' kid, and because assistant production, that's the bottom, if I'm not mistaken. That's like what you do
to get your bones,
to get your cred in the industry. And he started out that way, which I think is pretty awesome. You know, he was like, I'm not, you know, he could have easily probably signed on as an exec producer or just gone straight to producing himself, but being an AP on a film, that's pretty badass. And
the fact that he's got the Williams name, he's Robin Williams' son. We talked about nepotism in Hollywood before. They easily could have just stepped into whatever they wanted to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's interesting that he did choose to go the other route.
So I want to get your opinion on this. When it comes to somebody like Jack Quaid, Meg Ryan and Dennis Quaid's son, who...
I did not know that they had a son.
Yeah, oh yeah. And he's currently the, what's his name? In The Boys, the main character.
Huey,
thank you. So... You know, yeah, his parents were big mega stars, but you know, they're also they're down to earth kind of mega stars. You know, they're kind of your, I don't know, barbecuing dad type mega stars, I guess. I don't know how to put it. But when your dad is Robin fucking Williams, I mean, talk about like the biggest personality in the room. It's hard for me to imagine them ever being able to step out of that shadow.
Well, I mean, trying to live up to that in anything that you do, if it's like a comedic role, they're gonna be like, "Oh, you're Robin Williams' son. You have to be just like him." I don't necessarily think that they could. So maybe that is something that he did. He's like, I can't put myself in my dad's shoes. I can't do what my dad does. I'm not gonna even try.
Absolutely.
For Zach and Zelda, I mean, I know that they have some credits under their name, but I haven't seen anything huge with them. So they're never, I'm not going to say that they're never going to have that kind of star power because it's Robin Williams.
Yeah. And they're also in their 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not, you know, they're not like over the hill or anything.
Yeah.
You know, obviously a lot of big megastars kind of get their start in their 20s, and by their 30s, they're, you know, seeing some of those big box office hits, but there's still plenty of time for these two. And hell, maybe they'll have a later in life renaissance where we're going to see them really take off in some big blockbusters, you know, in their 50s or 60s. Who knows? That could totally happen.
I mean, at the end of the day, though, like going into Robin's career, you know, he had an Academy Award, 5 Grammys for stand-up, 6 Golden Globes, a couple of Primetime Emmys, and a slew of other awards. That really all started with his stand-up. Like, he was a stand-up artist through and through. He loved to act in movies. He liked to be in TV, but stand-up was where he really, really shined. And if they're going into acting and they're not going into stand-up, maybe that's why they haven't had the same kind of comeuppance that he did, because people noticed him when he was in stand-up, and then that's kind of what grew his star.
Probably also helped that the man was apparently a fucking workaholic.
Yeah,
like,
and a genius when it came to thinking of it. Like,
you know, hearing Lewis Black talk about how they got off the USO tour and then immediately he was on some other project. You know, while everybody else on that tour, whether it was Kathleen Madigan or Lewis Black, were like, okay, now it's time for us to, you know, rest and recuperate. Not him. He was immediately on to another project.
And that's something that goes back to what his brother was saying, is that whenever you grow up as an only child and that kind of breeds that into you, especially when you have depression in your family, it kind of seemed like he didn't want it to ever be quiet. He had to keep it going. And that's what I think we're going to delve into today, just talking about Robin. So let's go into his early life first. I will say, first and foremost, we are a movie podcast. We talk about movies. That's our bread and butter. I am going to touch on his stand-up because you can't not talk about that. I'm going to also go briefly into his TV career. There was a very, very big, you know, era where he was in Mork and Mindy, and that, you know, was really what grew his career as well. But I am going to stick mostly to his movie career. Starting out, Robin was born in Chicago, Illinois. He was born to, you know, Robert and Lori. And if you were to compare photos between him and his parents, you would see he looked, you know, pretty much just like his mom. And it's funny because in the documentary that we saw, his mom was fucking hilarious.
Oh my God, she was.
Yeah, she was hilarious.
Holy shit. And I love how they played off of each other. Oh, it was not only funny, it was fucking adorable.
Yeah. It was like, okay, so obviously he got that comedic sense from his mom. And his dad apparently, you know, he was an executive at Ford's Lincoln Mercury department. And they were always moving around, and Robin described him as being one of the hardest laughs that, you know, you could ever have, just because he really didn't laugh all that much.
You know what's weird? You know who else has said that? What is it? Bert Kreischer? I always fuck with his last name. He said the exact same thing. Like, the only time he's ever heard his dad laugh super hard was when he fucked up thinking that when his wife said she wanted pajamas for Christmas, he thought that meant multiple pajamas, so he just got her nothing but pajamas.
And he thought it was hilarious.
And his dad is just sitting there busting out laughing as she opens each gift, and it's another pair of pajamas. So I don't. Is that like a thing? So if you want to be in stand up and do a really good job, apparently you just got to have a dad that gives you no quarter when it comes to your jokes.
And the documentary that we are talking about, and I would definitely recommend watching it, it's called Come Inside My Mind. And while it does sound dirty, it's really about how Robin had this bit where he was explaining how comedy works in his mind and how an interaction with the audience about something that he says can trigger a series of events. So, like, if the audience is reacting to one thing, he'll switch around and change it up and come up with a different improvisation, or he'll come up with a different way of, like, speaking, or like another mannerism. And then if that didn't work, he just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And at the end, it's just kind of a freak out that he's having in his mind while still entertaining. But it's a great documentary. I would definitely recommend it. Now, I will say that he did get a lot of inspiration from watching Jonathan Winters. I guess they were sitting down and watching Jonathan Winters on it was like Tonight Show or something like that. And his dad was like cracking the fuck up about this. And he was like, hold on. My dad's laughing at this. How can I be like that? And if you watch Jonathan Winters and then you also look at Robin Williams, you can clearly see that he definitely took inspiration from him. And it's funny that Robin would actually go on to act with Jonathan in Mork and Mindy, and then he presented him with the Pioneer TV Land Award in 2001.
That's badass.
So it's like your inspiration is also someone you get to work with, but then you also get to present them an award later in life.
So it's like the fact that I get to work with you.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't give really awards. It's just...
I'm going to make you an award now. I'm going to make you an award that says...
Is it going to be a toasticle?
I don't know what that would look like, and now I'm horrified because I'm imagining what it could look like.
I think it would be 2 odd-shaped pieces of toast, buttered.
Just had to throw the buttered in there, didn't you? Get back to Robin Williams, you sick fuck.
After high school, which in high school, I guess he was in a lot of different high schools. It was just one of those things. He was also in a preparatory academy at some point, and it was almost like he was being taught as if he was the teacher in Dead Poet Society. Like, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I did catch that where he was talking. And well, it wasn't him talking about it, but yeah, they were showing the photos, and it was very Dead Poet Society-esque, as if he was one of the students within the film.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where it's like, I wonder if he drew inspiration from life from that as well. Because if you've seen Dead Poet Society, he plays his role very dramatically. It's very reserved, but still dramatic, and he's not over the top like he usually is. Now, after high school, which he was voted most likely not to succeed, and also the funniest, which is kind of funny to me, he went on to study political science. He quickly dropped out of that to study acting, and he once stated drama classes where the girls are. So that's really why he wanted to go into like drama.
Yeah, I feel like that theme is going to be prevalent throughout Robin's life.
Yeah. During the time where he was discovering himself, he was also discovering a lot of women as well.
A lot
of women. But it seemed like at least his first wife was okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, they both actually kind of seemed to be okay with it, I guess. The first wife was like, it's fine. Or not his first wife, but the girlfriend.
Yeah, the girlfriend. I thought the wife was the...
But yeah, I think the wife was okay with it too. Yeah, the first wife and the girlfriend both seemed to have... But, they all came up in the 60s. That's kind of how I saw it. So
he would go on to study after he, obviously moved on to drama. He went on to study at Juilliard in 1973 alongside Christopher Reeve, which is super interesting to me. His classmates, friends, and family all described him as being someone that he was like almost out of this world, but someone that never wanted to be alone, as I talked about before. Whenever I'm looking at Robin and I'm looking at who he was when he was younger, I kind of attribute this as being like the classic sad clown. You're always one with the jokes and wanting to make other people laugh, make other people laugh, but there's darkness inside, and all you can do is cry. Now, Robin really got his start to fame from his stand-up. He started in 1976 in San Francisco, going up until the end of his life. And if you've ever seen his stand-up, it is incredible to watch.
Film it, Bobby. How's the tornado? Just blew my pants off. Keep shooting. Fucking A. You know the difference between a tornado and divorce in the South? Nothing. Someone's losing a trailer. Number one.
His quick wit and his timing, at least in my opinion, are unmatched. His friends, Billy Crystal, David Letterman, and Steve Martin, are all friends that have remarked and said how amazing it was to watch him perform. This success from his stand-up would lead to him in his iconic role as Mork on Mork and Mindy, first starting out on an episode of Happy Days in 1978.
Now, am I misremembering this, or was one of the casting director who apparently was also a member of the Gary family. Did the casting director or somebody not find Robin performing on the street?
So there was somebody that saw him performing down the street and was like, hey, you got to come see this guy. But Robin actually had performed on, I think it's like Comedy Now or something like that, something along those lines. I don't have the exact name written down here. But he was performing in this troupe, and I guess it was also televised at some point. It wasn't like an actual television show, but they saw him on that, and that's
like public access or something
yeah, something like
sure.
that. And that's what led him into this role.
Gotcha.
Now, the reaction from the audience from his appearance on this show was so great that he did get his own sitcom alongside Pam Dauber from 1978 to 1982, which catapulted him even further into stardom. It brought him into the home of all the viewers that were eagerly tuned in each week. During this time, I will say, and I did not know this about him, but from 1978 to 1988, he was married to Valerie Velarde. During this time, even before they actually got married and he was seeing her, he was seeing a lot of other women. He had I think it's just something in his mind that he had one of those like addicted personalities where he just quickly would pick up something he was addicted to. So women was the first thing that I think really came to mind. And then during this time, it was the cocaine.
Cocaine.
The cocaine. Robin very famously was addicted to the cocaine. And during this time, it was getting pretty bad, but not so bad that it was going to really stifle his career or anything like that. But it was starting to get really bad. And then the reason I preface this first is because his success on Mork and Mindy led him into some film roles. And the film roles did not predate him getting rid of his addiction. He started in some roles while he was still working on Mork and Mindy, and this kind of gets interspersed. So his first role was Can I Do It Till I Need Glasses in 1978, but his first leading role was in Popeye in 1980.
Oh, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man.
Now, Sean, can you please tell us, did Popeye do very well?
Oh, Popeye did amazing. Absolute box office smash. Critics couldn't get enough of it. It was so good they decided to include it in.
He's
the
so
capsule.
full of shit, guys. He's so full of shit.
No, it was. I mean, have you seen this movie?
I have.
It's not good.
It's not a good movie at all.
It's great seeing Robin Williams in anything. Honestly, there. Even a bad Robin Williams movie, like what is it, Moscow on the Manhattan or whatever it was, the one where it's like, he plays a Russian character. Even his bad movies can still be enjoyable to watch, but no, Popeye was a critical failure.
Yeah, critical and financial flop. And at the end of this, he was like, he really didn't even know if he wanted to go in acting anymore. He's like, well, I tried that, it didn't work out. So he went right back into stand-up. And while he was doing his stand-up during this time, he also had his son, Zach. But it's kind of weird to me that he did have a son during this time, but he didn't stop using cocaine.
So what was the catalyst I assume he did stop at some point. Yeah,
he did stop at some point.
So what got him to that point?
So it was right after he starred in The World According to Garp in 1982. He had some smaller roles as well, but nothing that really helped his career. He had a friend, a very famous friend during this time named John Belushi.
I think I've heard of him.
John Belushi, known from SNL, known from the Blues Brothers, a phenomenal actor, Animal House. John Belushi was known to be very into the drugs. I think the combination that he did whenever he actually finally passed was like cocaine, heroin, and something else. I think it was like I forget exactly what it was.
I heard cocaine and heroin.
Was
I
it a
didn't know there was anything
speedball?
else.
I think is what they call it.
I think the heroin was what did him in.
Yeah. And so what happened is the night before John Belushi actually passed, Robin had visited him, and he was talking to other friends later on about how funny it was that Belushi was so messed up that night. And the next day he went to go film an episode of Mork and Mindy, and I believe it was Pam Dauber that was the one that actually broke it to him that, hey, Belushi had passed away. And Robin had a hard time accepting this at first. He was like, no, I literally just saw him. And they're like, yeah, Robin, we know you just saw him, but he did pass. Now, in his own words, he said that sobered the shit out of him. He quit cocaine and actually took up bicycling instead.
Okay, that I did not know. He became a cyclist.
Yeah, he became a cyclist after
A
that.
cyclist. Oh,
He
good for him.
he said that cycling saved his life.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to me as well.
Sounds more like Belushi saved his life, but sure, yeah,
Right.
cycling. Fuck it, why not?
Now, Robin still continued to have great success as a stand-up comedian, and Mork and Mindy did end in 1982. Pretty much soon after this, it kind of just ended and fizzled out. And then he started trying to act in more roles, and then he landed, a big role as Adrian Cronauer in 1987 in Good Morning Vietnam. I
Say
don't
it.
know, huh?
Say it.
Oh,
Say
okay.
it.
In Good Morning Vietnam.
Man, that was actually really good.
Oh yeah, I know that
Were
was
you,
really bad.
Juilliard trained? Is that what that?
Oh no, I wish. I think it's very interesting to me that I guess the casting director must have been a fan of his, because he was given carte blanche to just improvise, and actually improvised most of his lines. The movie gave him his first Academy Award nomination and really launched his career even further into the stratosphere. He became more estranged with his wife during this time, and they did finally separate in 1988. This was also the year he acted in The Adventures of Baron von Munchausen, which me and Sean recently watched. Not
Goddamn
recently,
right we
but it was a
did.
couple months ago. But I didn't know that he was not credited as Robin Williams in this. He was credited as Ray DiTudo.
Really?
Yeah,
Weird.
Robin Williams
I did
is-
not catch that.
Yeah.
So going back to the improvisation thing, I know you and I in the past have talked about obviously his role in the Birdcage,
Yeah.
and they didn't allow a lot of improvisation because they wanted to be kind of true to the script. And we talked about a few of the things like Nathan Lane's famous line that we use for describing our shorts as schmeckens. So aside from the Birdcage, in your research, were there really any other films where Robin wasn't given a lot of room to breathe when it came to... And I'm referring obviously more to his comedic roles. Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
I can't really imagine a lot of off-script would have been warranted. But
I think Hook and Ferngully were two of them that he didn't really have the range to do exactly what he wanted. Because those were still comedic films, but obviously he can't just go out of the park and do whatever the hell he wanted. I guess
you can't Robin Williams it.
With Batty, I guess, and Ferngully, that is something too, which we'll talk about Ferngully in a minute. But it just I think that all of his directors and producers and everything like that just kind of really looked at it and said, "This is Robin Williams. Just let him do what the hell he wanted." Now, in 1989, he did marry his former nanny, Marcia Garces, and it is contrary to popular belief, they did not have an affair before he was married to Valerie. They didn't get together till after the divorce.
Yeah.
Now, this
The
also...
people that he cheated on his wife with, those were all those other women.
Yeah,
Not
those
this
are-
one, though.
Well, those were allowed. They were on a break.
It's funny, too, because he also starred in an episode of Friends.
Now, this year also marked his role in Dead Poets Society, which garnered massive critical acclaim.
Marked as, the 25th or 30th?
What?
You said this year marked... Oh, the year you're talking
I was
about.
like, what are you talking about? No,
I thought you meant
this year,
2023.
No, 1989.
1989. This is when we're getting him in Dead Poets
Yeah.
Society. Got it. Okay.
Now, leading into the 90s, this is pretty much where everyone can say this is the classic Robin Williams era. He went to star in Awakenings in 1990, The Fisher King in 1991, Hook in 1991 as well, Ferngully and Aladdin in 1992. Now, there was a feud that happened with Disney, and it's super, super famous because he actually told Disney he did not want his voice used for merchandising at all. He accepted $75,000 instead of $8 million to ensure this wasn't done, and then Disney went back on their word.
Get fucked.
Yeah.
Did they really?
He was stated as saying, then all of a sudden, they released an advertisement. One part was the movie, the second part was when they used the movie to sell stuff. Not only did they use my voice, they took a character I did and overdubbed it to sell stuff. That was the only thing I said, don't do that. That was the one thing where they crossed the line.
So, okay, and I don't know if this is going to be part of your research or if this is kind of where you're going, but do we know why? Like, why? What his particular beef with advertisement for product placement was, or if he had some sort of aversion to that practice?
I didn't see exactly where he described why it was. If I had to guess, though, this was a kids movie, and Robin's voice and his stand-up was very not for kids.
Okay.
If I had to guess, it's probably out there. I didn't find that in my research at all.
So it's not like he was opposed to advertisement. His worry was if they use his voice, kids might, go digging deeper and find like some of his stand-up or something.
That's the impression that I got, but again, it could be completely different reason. If that is the case, somebody please let us know that this is the actual reason, but I didn't see that's the reason. Now I will say that he did refuse to work with Disney until they apologized, and he didn't act in the second movie, Return of Jafar. He only returned in 1996 after he received the apology from Joe Roth. They scrapped all of the animation recordings of Dan Castellaneta, I think his name is, who was like
the Simpsons guy.
Yeah, the guy that was like the replacement for the genie, and they reworked all of the animation to fit Robin Williams' style.
Nice.
Now, getting away from Disney, he also starred in Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993. To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. It's a bit role.
I was about to say he was in that.
Yeah, he was John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that movie, so I was like, I'm putting this in here. And in Jumanji. Now, this did eventually lead to a less comedic role as the psychiatrist Sean Maguire, and that little movie,
that little indie film.
Yeah, the little indie film
that I don't think anybody's heard of that though.
It's like, what is it? Good.
It's Good Sam Cooking.
Yeah, Good Sam Cooking.
Good Sam Cooking.
No, obviously, we're talking about Good Will Hunting, and this actually earned him his first and only Oscar. Now, one of my all-time favorites that he acted in was in 1998 in a movie called What Dreams May Come. I personally kind of believe that that's what happens in your afterlife, but that's just me.
How did critics like that one, AJ?
They didn't like that one.
No, they didn't like that one.
I like that movie, though. But then in 1998, he also starred in Patch Adams, and then the next year he did Bicentennial Man.
Man, the 90s really were coming up Robin, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Holy shit.
Now, I'm not going to say that his output really throttled itself, but his output of, like, the classic Robin movies, that kind of seemed to fizzle out a little bit. He still had great critical acclaim, and he really had great success to the end of his life.
Did the fizzle happen after Good Will Hunting?
No, it didn't happen after that, because after Good Will Hunting, he still had, like, Patch Adams, which was another...
But another serious, kind of a somewhat serious role.
Yeah.
And then Bicentennial Man, another somewhat serious role. The reason I'm asking is, you kind of saw this with Jim Carrey, too. Huge comedic roles that really defined him as an icon in American culture. And then Man on the Moon happens, and he dives himself into this character. And he also, what's the other one? The Truman Show. He really tries to do these more serious roles that take on a more heavy subject matter. And after that, we start to see this decline in their desire to want to be comedic anymore, because it's like and I'm not saying it's like they're, all of a sudden they hate comedy or anything. It almost seems like once they get a taste for being able to really throw themselves into a role like that, they just, that's what they want to do, and that's where they want their career to go. And with Robin, it feels like maybe we're seeing a little bit of that too, because when he did Dead Poets Society, he didn't have the leverage to be able to say, I want more dramatic roles. He had to take what he could get at that time. But post Bicentennial Man and Good Will Hunting, he's one of the world's most famous comedic actors who now also has an Oscar under his belt. If he wants to do more dramatic roles, I feel like that's something he can kind of demand at this point.
Well, I wonder if that's part of it, but he also was doing a slew, and I can't remember how many tours he was doing, but he was on the road all the time for stand-up. Maybe it was a situation where he was being funny all the time. He just was like, maybe I just can't be funny for these movies.
Makes sense. Okay, yeah, sure.
Because, the next movie that he also had really good success in was 1 Hour Photo in 2002.
I remember that being such a flop.
It was great critically because of him,
and because he played a great. He wasn't even a serial killer, interestingly enough.
No, he's just a
really weird guy that you think might be a serial killer through the whole damn thing. Like, you're just waiting for that to come out, because like he asks for the photos and you're expecting it to be something really grotesque, and it's totally mundane, and it's a really he plays it so well, and yet. I don't remember that film doing really, really well in theaters. So critically, it may have actually been okay, but I think financially, I don't remember that being very successful.
And I think that sometimes happens, especially if people went to the theaters and they were expecting funny Robin. I honestly, when I first saw this movie, I didn't even realize that was Robin Williams at first, because he looked so different in that movie.
That's a good point, because with 1 Hour Photo, it's Robin. It's a movie about Robin.
Yeah.
You know, or Robin is the star.
Yeah.
Versus Good Will Hunting, where you go and it's like, oh, Robin Williams is in this. That's cool, but he's not the star. You know, we've got Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Those are our big two from that. And Robin Williams is, you know, very well known playing a more secondary role. So nobody's going there thinking, oh, I'm coming here for the Robin Williams experience. But with 1 Hour Photo, I think I'd agree. People might go there thinking, oh, good, the guy from Aladdin's going to be in this.
I mean, he did have some really good like voice actor roles right after that too. He had Robots in 2005, and then he had the Happy Feet series, which I love him as Ramon in the Happy Feet series. He was also in Night at the Museum. He was in that series. He played.
Oh my God, that's right. He plays the president.
Yeah,
the former president.
Was it Teddy Roosevelt?
Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah.
And he did play in a movie in 2009 called The World's Greatest Dad, and I don't know if you've actually seen this movie.
I haven't, but I did see what they gave us in the documentary, and thank you for that cockshot.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I will say that this movie is also, it's a serious but also a funny role, and it does center on him. But it's ironic that it's a movie about a kid that actually kills himself during hanging, and he's trying to defend his son's legacy by like not letting everyone know that he died because he was actually just masturbating.
I did not realize that's what the movie was about.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like I don't know. I never watched that movie. I think it came out while I was probably overseas. And I just never, it was never one of those movies where I felt the strong urge to go back and watch, but my impression of that was never that that's what it was about. This is literally the first time I'm hearing this.
During this time, and I think this might have been also another slowdown thing where he couldn't just work and act at the same time. He developed alcoholism pretty heavily during this time and mentioned it several times during his stand-up about his alcoholism.
Because we have these things called blackouts as alcoholics. It's not really blackouts. It's more like sleepwalking with activities. Kind of strange.
But he did never use cocaine again. The toll of working tirelessly on the road, in addition to acting and all of his stress, started to develop some problems. He developed some heart problems and had to undergo surgery in 2009 to replace his aortic valve, repair his mitral valve, and fix his irregular heartbeat. All of those at one time. And Billy Crystal actually mentioned in the documentary that I watched that he knew that this was going to be a very serious surgery. And so he recorded a bunch of voice messages for Robin to listen to whenever he woke up, which I thought was just really, really sweet. It seemed like him and Billy Crystal really, really like loved each other. Like,
yeah, their dynamic was really touching. And I think Billy put it best by noting that Robin knew that Billy didn't want anything from him. I mean, they worked well together. They had a lot of comedy specials they did together. I think they were both in when I said they were. Robin appeared in Friends. I think it was with Billy Crystal, if I remember correctly. It might have been him or somebody else, but I swore it was Billy. But they were just great friends because, unlike other people who were probably watching that rise to stardom and wanting a piece of Robin Williams and wanted to kind of ride those coattails, for Billy, it was he just saw Robin as for what he was, a fellow goofball whose company he genuinely enjoyed.
And it seemed that his really good friends, like, Pam Dauber, who actually didn't work with him at all after Mork and Mindy for real until his TV show in 2013. But her, Steve Martin, David Letterman, just all of these people described him as just being one of the purest souls ever. Obviously a dark undertone of everything because of how he felt about himself, but he was just a pure light, and they really just wanted to be near that. That's really what it was.
Not to detract from our current discussion, but just for our toasticles, you may remember that Pam Dauber was the leading female role in a film that we covered a few weeks back called Stay Tuned, starring John Ritter. So just a little tidbit there for anybody that's kind of been on this journey with us.
It was nice to see Pam Dauber there too, because whenever we did the episode with Stay Tuned, I was like, Pam Dauber, I recognize her. I just don't recognize her from a lot of stuff. And then seeing her older and actually being able to talk about this from behind the scenes and how she really felt about Robin during the time and also during Mork and Mindy, I was like, okay, Okay, Pam, I see you. Robin did recover from his surgery, and he was pretty jovial about it. He was actually joking with David Letterman about it at some point.
I saw that because apparently they both, what do you call them?
Zipper chest.
Zipper chest club. I was like, that is, if I ever have to have heart surgery, I look forward to calling myself a member of the Zipper chest club. I thought that was pretty clever.
Robin did undergo his second divorce in 2010. Just on irreconcilable differences, I think is what they had stated there. But then he got married the next year, for the last time, to Susan Schneider.
I mean, I'm sure Robin had, plenty of encounters with numerous women. But just generally speaking, from the type of individual we're talking about here, I can only imagine that if he's willing to enter into any long-term relationship with anybody, that this is not going to be somebody who's, like we were talking about earlier, some people that might have just been around him to ride coattails. This is going to be genuine people. He seemed to have a knack for kind of attaching himself to really genuine, wonderful individuals like Billy Crystal or the women that he spent his time with.
Now, Robin did continue working, even up to the end of his life, pretty much. And he started in a 2013 TV show called The Crazy Ones. It didn't get very good reviews, but the critics did enjoy watching Robin. I didn't know that Sarah Michelle Gellar was in the show either.
I don't think I've ever even heard of this show.
Yeah, it was. I remember hearing about the Robin show, everyone's like calling it the Robin show. It wasn't. I never heard it as the Crazy Ones. It's like, oh, the Robin show. He enjoyed it, but it seemed like he was less of himself during this time. And Pam Dauber, whenever she actually went on the show, she said that she remembers seeing him while she was guest starring and realizing he was not his usual self. That he seemed like there was a couple things just kind of missing there. Other friends, including Billy Crystal, and I keep saying Billy Crystal because I love Billy Crystal, and I'm so glad that they were friends. So I'm going to keep talking about Billy Crystal.
You can talk about Billy Crystal all damn day. One of my favorite lines, because there's this TikTok trend that's like, what line from a movie do you repeat all the time? And I repeat things from City Slickers ad nauseum because fucking Billy Crystal, man, the guy is it's weird now to try to describe Billy Crystal to people, because he's not as prevalent in film anymore. But Jesus Christ, through the 90s, he was just there. He was, When Harry Met Sally, City Slickers, Hamlet. I mean, Jesus Christ, the man was a dynamo. And hell, he hosted the Oscars like fucking, I don't know, how many years in a row?
It's even so much sadder knowing how Billy really felt about Robin, because he loved Robin with all his heart. And there's a really sad story I'll kind of tell at the end about what Billy has to say about him. I do mention Billy again because he did mention that there were periods where Robin was his usual self, but then there were other times where he seemed to struggle just to make it through the day. Robin was racked with bouts of depression, and eventually he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. He was able to maintain his sobriety during this time, but the fear, anxiety, depression, and insomnia were really starting to become a daily battle for him. And his wife mentioned that the progression of Robin's condition that was deteriorating quickly, and the symptoms, including memory loss, were starting to appear. Now, he was fully aware of what was happening to him, and he felt trapped. And he kept saying he wanted to just reboot his brain because there were days where he was himself and there were days where he wasn't. What he was eventually diagnosed with whenever he died and they were actually doing the autopsy, they found out that he had Lewy bodies disease. This is an offshoot of Parkinson's, and it's something that develops with Parkinson's. It's essentially a buildup of the protein alpha-synuclein. And the protein is thought to help regulate neurotransmitters, but when it forms in a mass, it can just cause just a huge slew of problems in your brain. And that is called a Lewy body. So that mass that forms whenever there's that protein buildup is called a Lewy body. So Lewy body's disease. Now, this is severely devastating to your body, and it does lead to dementia, which after Alzheimer's is the second common form of dementia. No one really knows exactly what he was feeling in those last moments, but Robin did take his life on August 11th, 2014. I can only think that during that time, he realized he didn't want to just lose himself, and struggling with depression and everything like that. I don't know if it just got to him or whatnot, but he did take his life, and I remember hearing about that and crying. There's very few artists and celebrities that whenever I hear about them passing, I cry. Robin Williams was one of them.
I hate the idea of speculating on this, but all I can think is what you talked about in the very beginning of the podcast, where you noted he didn't want to be alone. Whether it was because he was an only child or maybe he just, was very performative. He didn't like the idea of being alone. And all I can think is how terrifying it must have been facing the reality that eventually his body was going to trap him in a state of constantly being alone inside of his own head. I would never advocate for anyone to hurt themselves, but I do advocate for people to be able to both live their life and decide when it's over on their own terms. I hate that he was going through this, but if this is what he felt was best, then I don't know. I don't want to say I support him in it, but I also don't want to rob him of the choice that he felt he had to make by somehow suggesting that, there was, a better way or a different path, because if this is what he felt was best, that's for Robin to decide.
The thing that really hits home for me is that, as you were just talking about, he must have felt so alone in the fact that there were moments where he wasn't himself. And this is something that in my family, dementia does run in my family. That is something that happens. I have a great grandma that passed away from Alzheimer's, and hearing the stories about how Robin just really felt that he was losing himself, it really just, it makes me think, what would I do in that situation? I would never want to lose a part of myself. And then the fear of waking up one day and not knowing where you were, not knowing your family, not knowing your friends, not recognizing
knowing who you are.
Yeah, not recognizing yourself in the mirror. That is just so terrifying to me. And the fact that I'm not going to say, like you said, it's not that I believe it's the right thing, it's the wrong thing, but to have the strength to be able to say, I don't want to live through that, I can only imagine actually making a decision like that. Robin was remembered by friends and fans for his amazing personality, his comedic genius, and the talent that we are able to enjoy in all of his movies, TV shows, and all of his film stand-ups. And I will say that, just going back and watching Robin, I get such joy in everything that he did. I mean, we have our podcast, I Pierce the Toast, which is from a movie that he was in. And I just have to say thank you to Robin, really, because I know that growing up, I was always the kind of kid that I don't know if I felt alone or anything like that, because I had brothers and sisters and everything like that, but I really loved movies. The movies I really loved, a lot of them were Robin Williams movies. Jumanji, Tu Wong Fu, Flubber even. I mean, Flubber's not a great movie in any way, shape, or form, but Flubber, Ferngully, Hook, Mrs. Doubtfire, all of those movies that I grew up watching and just truly appreciated everything that he did. Because at the end of the day, I think the reason that I felt so strongly whenever he passed was he was almost like a friend to me. I never really knew him, but because I knew his roles and I felt like he would be someone that I could be a friend to, I don't know, it really felt like I was losing a friend.
So you're saying that you ain't never going to have a friend like him?
I ain't never going to have a friend like him.
Just for our audience that may not know, that is a reference to a song that he sings in the original animated version of Aladdin.
Let me take your order, jot it down. You ain't never had a friend like me.
Well, AJ, thank you for taking us on this journey. This is the fact that you were able to keep this fairly condensed is impressive. There is so much that could have been said in this podcast about Robin Williams. So much. Most documentaries are only an hour long. The documentary, what was it called again?
Come Inside My Mind. Come Inside My Mind.
Come Inside My Mind on HBO Max is a 2-hour-long documentary, and there's a reason for that, because it is impossible to condense this incredible individual into such a short time frame. And as I'm sure you've caught on if you've been listening to our podcast, we talk about Robin Williams a lot. He comes up constantly, whether it's through films that we're reviewing or talking about that he's watched, performances that are adjacent to films that we've watched, or individuals who he's helped influence or worked with along the way. Whether it's his direct actions in the movies that he did, or his influence on the performers that we are enjoying today, we're going to forever be in debt to Robin Williams. And I just want to say thank you for taking me on this journey.
Well, you know what? You're welcome for my service.
Fucking dick. Couldn't leave it with this heartfelt moment, could you? No. You got to fucking go down that line.
Now, usually we do go into, what movies and all that kind of stuff, like where we can find it. But he's got so many of them. You can find, I guarantee, if you really wanted to watch them. We've already mentioned that The Birdcage was free to watch on
like 7 different platforms. Yeah, it's insane.
For free. Go and find, that's all I really want you to do with this episode. I want you to go find a good Robin Williams film. Go find a new Robin Williams film. Watch it and let us know how you feel about it.
Well, our music is created by Augusta Denise, logo by the newly branded Design World, mixing and editing by IPTT Studios.
And we want to hear from you and your own slice of toast. Tell us about the films that you think we and others should see, actors to showcase, or topics to discuss. You can reach us on Instagram at IPTT_podcast, email us directly at ipttpodcast@gmail.com, or interact directly through the Spotify app.
And if you ever find yourself craving more Sean and AJ after a schmeckin', with over 15 episodes in the bag, remember,
you can always get more toast.
Thanks for listening.
I don't know how much value I have in this universe, but I do know that I made a few people happier than they would have been without me. And as long as I know that, I'm as rich as I ever need to be. So I'll catch you on the rebound, your magnitude. Until next week, Nanu, Nanu.